Well, welcome back to another edition of the Real Life Finance Podcast. I am joined by none other than our CEO, Jim Ryan. Jim, I'm really glad you could be here today.
Well, Ben, happy to be here, and really great that you've started these podcast series. Happy to participate and share a little bit about myself and Old National. But I also want to say congratulations on your 25th anniversary here at Old National. And as we've teased you since I've known you, I think for 20 of your 25 years here at the bank, I think you started when you were 10 years old. So, well, congratulations. And I really appreciate your hard work and dedication. And as I said to you in my message on social media, we are better because of you. And you've been a big part of our success. Absolutely.
Well, Jim, I appreciate that. And yeah, it's been a quick 25 years. I remember starting as a high school or as a college freshman as what I thought would be just a fun summer job. And 25 years later, I love what I do, and I can't thank you enough for the support you've given us on this. So
absolutely
appreciate you. Well, so I want our followers and listeners to get to know, Jim Ryan from a personal side. We'll get into the business side as well. But I'd like to kind of start off by telling us about your early life, your early career, your first job, and how you transitioned into the banking world.
Sure. I grew up in Michigan, and pretty typical small town America life here in the Midwest. Really had a great childhood. It was the kind of place that, we would leave sometime in the morning and come home well after dark. And our parents really had no idea where we were at most of the time. But we knew we had a lot of neighbors that were watching out after us. And so if I ever got in trouble, I knew it would very quickly get back to my parents. And so I was really blessed to have that type of childhood and really appreciate, if you think about a lot of Old National's footprint, it looks a lot like that, that part of America. Pretty typical family. Both my parents worked, and instilled in me the hard work ethic of certainly the Midwest. My first job, other than my dad, he was always known to loan me out. If you needed a driveway shoveled, if you needed your grass cut, if you needed something done at your house and you needed an extra hand, my dad was really quick to loan me out to do that. Of course, none of that was paid ever work, but nonetheless, I did it. But that's the kind of place I grew up in, was places where you helped your neighbors out. But my first paid job was, believe it or not, I was a dishwasher. And
really?
Yes, I was a dishwasher at a 50s and 60s themed restaurant, and worked really hard. And as you know, one of our values here is a bias for action.
Yeah.
And in the dishwashing game, you have to have a bias for action because those dishes stack up really quickly, and you got to find a way by the end of the evening to make that big pile of dishes go away. And so
I think on that note, though, I don't think people realize how tough of a job the restaurant business, the dishwasher, it's tough.
It's tough. Customer service roles, and obviously we have many of those customer service roles here at the bank, are some of the toughest things that we do. Certainly in the hospitality industry, those are notoriously very difficult and sometimes lower paid roles. And as a dishwasher, I think you're the bottom of that rung. But that's exactly where I started. Now, interesting enough, we would actually have to go out, the entire staff, when they played the song, The Hand Jibe, would have to go out and sing that entire song and dance. I was not a very good dancer or singer, but I had to do that, as a part of the job.
Well, I think we'll skip out the singing part that we were going to do today. But no, that's it. So going from dishwasher, where did it lead to get into the financial industry? At what age did you do that?
Well, I think I always had a business mindset. Both my parents were in, business, and at one point, towards the end of my dad's professional career, he ran his own business, and so I probably always had that mindset of being in the business world. I was really blessed to have a lot of opportunities along the way. I worked really hard for those opportunities, but I was also blessed and were given some opportunities very early on to take different leadership roles, both in my high school career and my college career. And I still remember to this day, I was in the process of taking a midterm exam, and my finance professor, who was also the chair of the department, said, "How would you like a well-paid internship at a bank?" and giving that it was springtime and summer was right around the corner, I said absolutely, I would love to do this. He said, come see me after class. And so after class, I sat down in his office. He gave me about 3 minutes about what he knew about the position, and he dialed the phone and talked to a gentleman named Al Myers, who said, "I got a person for you, Al." And he handed me the phone, and so it was about 3 minutes to explain to me the position, 30 seconds to introduce me to Al, and then I was talking to Al, setting up a chance to go interview to be an intern, a summer intern at Old Kent Bank in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And literally the rest is history, because I've never stopped working for a bank since that date. I started as a summer intern, kept working at Old Kent as I finished up my college career, and then worked there permanently after college. And then ultimately, Old Kent Bank led to Old National Bank.
I love it. Because you and I met probably 2003, 4-ish, and we started working together during some bank initiatives and play golf together, things like that. But it's hard to believe it's gone that fast. And now we're gracious to have you as our CEO. You've done some phenomenal work. And I know there's a lot of listeners out there and followers that may have an ambition to be a CEO one day. So I ask you, Jim, for those that want to become a CEO, what are some milestones in your career that kind of really helped shape you get to where you are today?
Great question. I tell people all the time, first of all, it starts with some hard work, right? There's no substitution for hard work. And it doesn't matter what position you have in an organization. You have to get up and want to work, and you have to work hard every single day. And I really, truly believe there is nothing in this organization that I'm not willing to do. Nobody needs to tell me that something needs to be organized, or that piece of trash needs to be picked up, or those plates from lunch need to be cleared. I absolutely will do anything that's required of any of us at any point in time. And so there's no substitute for that good old-fashioned hard work. And then secondly, what I've tried to do in my career was really think about how this role that I'm currently in sets me up for the future role. And I always try to think 2 or 3 roles ahead of where my current role was at the time, and be really strategic about the types of experiences that I thought I was going to need in order to have that role 2 or 3 ahead. And I think that served me really well. I also wasn't afraid to take some risk. I volunteered for a lot of things. The initiative you were talking about, Ben, that was something that we volunteered for, and had different roles. And oftentimes when you take these initiatives and volunteer, you still have to kind of do your day job, and you got to kind of how to figure out how to do all of it together. But I wasn't afraid to go off and learn something, and I wasn't afraid to make mistakes. I wasn't afraid to dream big. I tell people all the time, sometimes you got to dream the big dream, right? And so I wasn't afraid to do that. At some point, even though it's uncomfortable, you have to tell people what your aspirations are. Some people hold back, sharing what their aspirations are for fear that people say, well, you're not smart enough, you're not, you don't have enough experience, you're not the right type for that type of role. But sometimes you just got to dream the big dream and say it out loud. And you'd be amazed at how people want to rally behind you to support you, in your professional and personal lives.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I speak to a lot of kids as well, and they dream like no other. And I think as people transition to adults, a lot of times they quit dreaming. And I always challenge people, like, you can accomplish anything you want, right? And when I was started here as a college kid, I wanted to be a teacher, and I started working at a bank, and now I'm teaching at a bank. And we had some visions early on, but we didn't know where it would go. And to your point, you throw those out there, you take risks, and the worst they can do is say no, right?
Right.
And here we are today with the dream that we had of bringing this Real Life Finance podcast to the bank. And I can't echo what you said enough there. I love that. So I know with being CEO comes a lot of challenges, a lot of demands, lots of hours that you put into the bank. So how does one manage the demands of being a CEO along with your personal life as a husband and a dad?
Well, that's a great question, and it's always a very delicate dance you do to ensure things are going well at home, and obviously you're taking care of your responsibilities here. And I always tell people there comes a point, particularly when you have large roles that really are somewhat 24/7 kinds of opportunities to have things go right, but also sometimes to have things go wrong. That you got to figure out how to integrate those two lives together. And it's really hard for me as a CEO or me as a leader to dictate how that integration works. Sometimes there are things that are going on in my professional life that work has to dominate and take more than its fair share of time. And then sometimes there are things going on in my personal life that requires me to pay more attention to that. And, the work is going to have to change as a result of it. And I think it's up to the individuals and the individual's particular family situations and in collaboration with the employer to try to figure out how to, I don't like to use the word balance because that presumes that there's a 50-50 equation. Right. And we just know that that's not possible. Sometimes, life demands when your kids are young, if you have another spouse that you're working with, and you're trying to balance out schedules, that sometimes you just have to figure out how to make it all work and integrate together. And so I've tried to do the best. I've been really blessed to have a super supportive spouse. My wife has done an amazing job of managing our household and taking care of our two daughters. And because of her, I've been able to dedicate probably more time to work than maybe others have the opportunity to dedicate. And I think that's clearly allowed me to excel in my career. So I'm really blessed and thankful for her, that she's given us that opportunity to be able to invest this part in our career. But at the end of the day, every situation is unique. Every family situation is unique. And you have to figure out how to work with in the means that you have with your employer context and your family life to figure out how to integrate the two.
Yeah. No, it's so true. And, because I've got 4 kids, as you know, 13, 9, 8, and 4. And I remember, Jim, when we started working together, I want to think that your daughters, Emma and Hannah, were probably like my youngest one's age. And to
Right.
think now they're all grown up, and I've met Trisha before, just great family. And yeah, so it is a little different at times, but I think we're both very lucky to have the support that we do to be able to do the work that we want. Wonderful. So we're on Real Life Finance Podcast. We talk about finances, helping our average listeners be better with their funds and things like that. So we've kind of taken this and grown it to a level that we're excited about. But I want to ask you, from the CEO side, how important do you think financial empowerment or financial literacy is for our younger generation up to our senior population?
I think, Americans and the population is just kind of generally waking up to how important financial literacy is. We know we could do a better job in society of particularly instilling that financial literacy as young as some of your youngest children are. It's incredibly important to get off to a strong start because some of those early decisions you make in life can be the ones that impact you the most. And you don't want to get started off on the wrong foot and have to constantly play catch up in your financial life. As we know, between work and personal lives and things can be challenging and there's a lot to manage. And so if you get off to a strong start, but what does a strong start mean? What does that exactly mean? And I think we could do a much better job in schools. And, maybe it's through religious affiliations, maybe it's through family members, but we should do a better job of educating people on what financial literacy means. And sometimes it's not that complicated. It's really the basics at the end of the day. Sometimes it comes down to not spending more than you earn, not putting things on credit only to make it very difficult to catch up. Managing, that impact to your credit score, which will be so impactful to you in life later on down the road. But some of those real basics in the day, and obviously we have a lot more tools today than we've ever had before, right? We have podcasts like this, which are give people, great insights or maybe point people in the right direction. But I think about the online tools that we provide for our clients, and there's so many places you can go. I do worry sometimes about the social media influence on financial literacy. Not everybody that's on TikTok absolutely has the best financial advice.
No, they don't.
And every situation is probably unique and different. So I think you should be a little bit choosy about where you get your financial advice. Obviously, Ben, we trust you. You're a paid, professional. who does this for a living, but and has really everybody's best intentions in mind. But there are platforms today that
Yeah.
do give really good advice, and some of them do come through social
Yeah.
media. But I think it is absolutely critical that we do a better job in society to make sure that we're providing really strong financial advice, because again, those early decisions can be those ones that impact you for the longest period of time.
I agree, and I think a lot of adults struggle, and kids, emotionally spending, right? I mean, whether it's the holiday time or people have a bad day, they go out and make a big purchase that could impact them financially for a long time. So we teach these things out in the field. As you know, we've got over 200 employees that volunteer to teach this stuff. So if you're listening and you want to have one of our folks come out and do a lesson with your employer or your community or your school, let us know. And we're starting to see some headway, as you mentioned, the schools. I know here in Indiana where we live, they've adopted that now every high school student will be required to take a standalone personal finance course before graduating. And I'm excited about that because that's when I wish I would have known about it, right?
Mhm.
I had to learn through trial and error,
Right.
and it was difficult. So, as I teach my kids about finances, I think a lot of parents aren't as open talking about money situations. And I'm not saying you have to share everything with your kids, but having those conversations. So as a dad to Emma and Hannah, what are some things that you were able to use to teach them financial responsibility when they were young, as it probably wasn't taught as much in school while they were there?
Yeah, one thing, certainly, my wife and I encourage them to be make good financial decisions, and in the early days, that really talks about saving, right, and building, savings in the future. But I will tell you, one of the most challenging things that I can do is deliver. Sometimes it's life advice, but oftentimes it's financial advice to two young daughters, and it can be challenging to, even though obviously I'm a financial professional, but most of the time they don't want to hear it from dear old dad. And so what I do is I try to point them in the right direction. I try to give them a little bit of advice. I try to ensure they go to the right sources for that advice. As we talked about, sometimes there's so much social media presence around this stuff. But I've also connected them with a financial professional who's worked with them to talk to them about, early parts of saving for the future,
Yeah.
right? And some of those early discussions, it can be very difficult to accept advice from your parents. I think I later in life I've realized that my parents were mostly right. Sometimes there's that meme out there. They were right. I just didn't like their tone.
Yes.
And so I probably have that a little bit of that with my daughters. They know I'm probably right, but they just don't like the way I deliver it sometimes. But what I've tried to do is point them in the right direction, give them a little bit of wisdom, but also get them to get advice from somebody that I trust,
Yeah.
and that can help them out.
I agree. So my kids, if you're listening, remember that. So it's no, we struggle with that as parents, and I will tell you, a lot of times, as parents, we are role models for our children, and whether it's just life in general, but finances as well, because what we do is what they see, and they're probably going to do what they see. So the better that our parents can be out there of helping educate and share I think being vulnerable too. Like I share the mistakes I made as a college student. I racked up credit card debt on spring break in Panama City. And I learned the hard way. And I tell my kids, like, this is what you shouldn't do. And I know you're going to make mistakes and that's okay. But when we can learn that stuff early on, it's great. So I applaud what you did with your girls for sure. And that's wonderful. So let's transition now from the personal side to the CEO side. Okay. So I know as a CEO, you have to make a lot of strategic decisions, and some can be easier, some can be tougher. So can you talk about some of the decisions you've made as CEO that really had a big, significant impact on Old National Bank?
Well, great question. And obviously, I've been here for 20 plus years, and there have been a lot of decisions along the way. Some of the biggest decisions that I participated in have been really, the expansion of the Old National footprint. And actually, Ben, you and I worked on one of those very early decisions when we entered the South Bend Elkhart markets together. We were up there helping, partnership in South Bend come be a part of the Old National family.
We flew on that Cessna, right? You probably remember my struggle there.
I do a little air sickness, but we got through that. But the reality is, I think those have been some of the most impactful decisions. I had the opportunity. I was primarily responsible for mergers and acquisition for a long part of my career, and as CFO and as CEO, have had a lot of opportunity to influence that. But was really those kind of market expansion opportunities and growth opportunities that probably had the greatest impact. I don't remember exactly what the asset size of the organization was, but we're probably 7 or 8 times the size we were since I started originally, and today we're a thriving, successful, mostly Midwestern organization. Although we have some obviously offices outside the Midwest, but one of the things that hasn't changed, I can tell you, is our commitment to our communities. That has been steadfast the entire time. That's interestingly enough, when I decided to come to Old National, I had other opportunities to go other places. And the thing that struck me was its commitment, Old National's commitment at the time, to its communities, to its team members, and to its clients. It just stayed with me that this is an organization that I wanted to be a part of. And in my tenure as an executive leader, I've tried to not only embrace that, but build upon that, make that even stronger. Our connections back to our communities, back to our team members, and back to our clients. And so I know that's a big part of why you are here at Old National, why you stay here at Old National, is that steadfast commitment. So while we've had amazing growth, we've transformed, the organization of the 20 plus years. A lot has stayed the same, which is our commitment back, to those 3 stakeholders.
It's all. I mean, people may not know that. I mean, we allow our employees paid time to go volunteer throughout the year, and you don't see that often. And to me, to your point, a big reason why I have always stayed here is not only the great people that work here, but big influence on the community and being able to volunteer. And I'm glad you mentioned volunteering earlier. I think that is one of the most important things. I remember the first time I did it, I was scared. I'm like, what do I do on a board? And now you can see change, and it's wonderful. And I challenge people that if you haven't ever been a part of a nonprofit board or volunteering, do it. Now I take my kids with me, and they're starting to see that experience of giving back with philanthropy as well.
It's, as you know, because you get to see it every single day, it's one of the greatest things this organization does, is it gets up every single day and it thinks about how do we improve the communities we serve. And a lot of that is backed right up by personal volunteerism. And yes, we do pay employees to go off and volunteer, but we also expect people to go off and volunteer. And each one of us, sets, I know you do an amazing amount of hours every year, and I try to do the same. But everybody has something to give, and everybody can give a little bit of time, back to the community. And we're blessed here at Old National that we can also back that up with some financial resources. And so we obviously give an awful lot of personal time, and we back that up with some financial resources. But it is one of the things that I think sets us apart from other financial institutions. And financial institutions generally do a pretty good job of this. But Old National, as you know, is a special place. And it's very high on our value set to be involved in our communities.
Yeah, because I think back when I started, we were probably 8 or 9 billion, I think, around, and to see where we're at now, but that community focus has never gone away, and I think that's something that folks that work here really believe and are passionate about. So, as we think about current banking, Jim, and future banking, I mean, we've seen a lot of change in our 20 plus years here at Old National, from the countless spreadsheets that I have to, used to utilize all the time, and how AI is now changing some of these things. So I want to see for you, what are some of the big opportunities or challenges for the banking industry for like the next decade? And I assume, we're starting to venture into AI as being a part of that. But what do you see as some of the biggest opportunities and challenges down the road?
Well, I think everybody wants to focus in on the technology aspects. And I don't know exactly, what the future holds, particularly if you look out, by long periods of time. I know one thing that's been true is, we just celebrated our 190th anniversary, as a bank, headquartered right here in Evansville, Indiana, the entire time. In fact, the building we're sitting in today is in the same location it started in 1834. And one thing that hasn't changed is our approach to everyday, financial services and banking help, right? It starts with people. It starts with people are our most important asset. And if relationships are part of why you're making a decision to do banking and financial services with an organization. We are really good at that. Relationships are how we win and how we're successful, and we develop long, deep relationships because of our people. And so I can't tell you exactly how AI or other technology is ultimately going to shape the financial services industry, but I'm pretty confident that at the end of the day, the center of those client relationships is always going to be around surrounding them with amazing individuals who are passionate and care about them, care about their families, care about how they're going to impact their lives and fulfill their dreams. And and I don't think there's any substitution. There's no AI in the world, at least today, that can do that consistently day in, day out, and the way we help our clients.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've dabbled in it and it helps make certain processes more efficiently, but it's the people. I mean, that's where you get the biggest impact.
Today, I use a fair amount of AI tools, and it's embedded in a lot of different, resources we have, but it just makes me more efficient.
Yes, agree.
But it's still, at the end of the day, it's me as an individual
Yes.
that can help, or us as collective as a team that helps out our clients. And so I think, again, I may have my head in the sand here about the exact impact it's going to be, but for banks like Old National who serve our communities, who serve those clients, I think people are still going to play an important role, whether it's 5 years from now or 10 years from now.
I agree. So as we talk about the future and the challenges of banking down the road, I want to get back to a point, Jim, that you talked about company culture and how important that is. So how do you foster a positive company culture here at Old National Bank, and what role or expanding on how that really plays out into our success here at Old National?
Well, I think a lot of people talk about culture. We talk about culture, and then we're try to take very deliberate action to manage culture. It really starts with we have a head of culture who reports directly to me, and she wakes up every single day to think about, how do we manage our culture? How do we curate it? How do we make it better? And our entire executive leadership team is engaged in the process, and we engage our entire senior leadership team. We do these culture connects, as you know. We get together as a senior leadership team and as an executive leadership team, talking about how do we need to continue to shape and evolve our culture. So while I think it's really easy, those are buzzwords to talk about culture. When it comes to partnerships, we just announced a new partnership in the Twin Cities with Bremer Bank.
Yeah, it's exciting.
It's exciting. And even using the word partnership is really around managing culture. As you know, very early on, we stopped using the word acquisition.
Yes.
We just didn't feel like it represented how we were trying to bring two companies together and get the best out of both companies. And we felt like partnership was a much better word to represent, our goals and our aspirations as a combined organization. And so we, have teams that wake up every single day and say, how are we going to get the best culture out of both organizations? And whether we're talking about our legacy organization or combining two organizations together, it's just being thoughtful and deliberate. And cultures evolve. And, when I became CEO, the culture was incredibly strong. And that was an important part of what the board was interested in maintaining. And not only did we maintain the culture, but we were very deliberate in how to improve the culture and how to be, again, those are easy words to say that team members are our most important asset. But what does that really mean to you, and how do you live that out through your values every single day?
No, it's I agree 100%, and it's not just checking a box. I mean, it's I've been here so a long time, and I see it, I believe it, and it's just part of who we are. And if when you're partnering with another bank in this case, making sure that they blend well together, it just makes it easier in the long run, right?
Yeah, as you know, I spend a lot of time on the road traveling. And on Monday and Tuesday this week, I was with clients, working on client relationships. Yesterday, I was in one of our markets attending their holiday function with clients and team members. I really try to spend as much time as possible as my schedule allows, which is 2 to 3 days a week, in front of team members and in front of clients and being involved in the community. And I try to set that tone, and I think that ultimately makes a big difference. I had 2 different team members in my office today from Chicago, checking in. How are things going? What can I do? What are you hearing? What could be better? And that's an important part, I think, of how we maintain and how we improve our culture every single day is staying incredibly connected to each other.
I think it's so important. And when you talk about team members being your important asset, we see it here. I'll never forget, Jim, it was back in late June when my dad passed away. That night, I got a text from you asking, what can I do? And I can just tell you, I'll try not to tear up here, but it meant a lot. And you don't see that everywhere. So I just want to say thank you for that. I appreciate that. So before we go into our lightning round questions that we do on every episode, I do want to ask, we had Luke Zeller on here as our first guest. And Luke talked a little bit about a place that he stayed at that I believe you were the exact same spot in, I want to say it was Japan. I didn't know if we heard Luke's side. I didn't know if Jim may have a different side of it.
Well, I think it's the same story, but one day Luke and I were comparing notes about our past, and he said that he played some basketball in Japan, and I said, well, that's interesting, Luke, what part of Japan, were you in? And he said, Otsu, Japan. And that's a little bit like saying, I went to America and I lived in a place called Evansville, Indiana. And I said, well, interesting, Luke. I spent a little time in Japan. I spent some time there in college, and I lived in a little place called Otsu in Shiga Prefecture, which is the state structure. And he said, well, that's really interesting. I lived in this place called the Michigan House. I go, well, Luke, I lived in this place called the Michigan House. And we realized that I don't think we tracked it down to the exact same apartment. I couldn't remember what apartment I stayed in, but we're pretty sure we may have even stayed in the exact same apartment.
Gosh.
Obviously, Luke is younger than I am, and so there was a number of years of separation. But of all the places you could be in the world, we lived in the exact same spot, separated by many years in a very small town in Japan.
Oh my God! When they say it's a small world, Jim, it's a small
super
world.
Small world.
For our listeners that haven't heard Luke's, go back and check it out, and you can hear his side. But yeah, I think very similar. That's great. So the way we like to kind of wrap up our podcast, Jim, is we do a little lightning round episode. So we're going to go into that lightning round right now. So I got a series of questions I want to ask. So number 1, Jim, what's the most valuable lesson that you've learned in your career or life so far?
Patience. Have patience. Sometimes it's very difficult to see how things are going to come together. And by the way, I struggle with patience every single day. My family will tell you I struggle with patience. My team members might tell you I struggle with patience. I just have this real sense of urgency to get things done and obviously to make improvements and continue to get better. But you can't always see, particularly when you're early on in your career or your life, everybody's in such a rush to get to the finish line. And it's always hard to see how this is all going to come together. And it may feel impossible sometimes for it all to come together. But life usually has an opportunity to work itself out in good ways, particularly if you're thoughtful about it and you work hard and you try to do the right things every single day. Life has its way of working itself out. So patience.
I agree, and I like you mentioned earlier. You had the internship at the bank. You're the treasurer, the CFO. I would assume you would agree with this, that you wouldn't be able to do the role that you're in now without that experience in those prior roles, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I know everybody wants to get to the top role as fast as possible, whatever top means to them. But sometimes life is a set of building blocks, and I believe you're only as good as the sum of your experiences.
Agree.
And so you got to have a lot of experiences in life. And you can do that. You can have a career at one company, despite what maybe other people tell you. You can have a career, a long career. As you know, you've been here 25 years. I've been here, almost that amount of time. People can have very successful, long careers at an individual company. And hopefully you got a company that wants to invest in you, wants to give you those set of experiences. And so that's an important part of how we think about helping our team members out.
Yeah, I agree. So I challenge our younger folks out there to dabble in a variety. I think I've been in like 4 or maybe 7 or 8 departments here, and it builds what you know about the company, but also makes you better at what you do down the road. So, all right, Jim, question number 2: if you could instantly master any skill, what would it be and why?
Oh, any skill. Uh, well, I don't know. That's a great question. I'd love to be a better golfer. I'd love to be able to
You're
go
a pretty
off
good
and.
golfer, though.
No, I'm far from that, and unfortunately, I don't get a chance to play that much. But I'd love to be a better golfer. And having said that, my wife is a tennis player, and she routinely beats me. So I'm gonna revise this. I'd rather be a better tennis player. Because I'd like to be tougher competition for my wife, because today she routinely beats up on me when we go on the tennis court together.
Do you dabble in pickleball as well?
I play a little bit of pickleball, so that's my wife begrudgingly plays pickleball with myself and some other friends that we have. But that's how whenever I get across that finish line, as CEO, my goal is to go off and be a better pickleball and tennis player, so my wife and I can play a lot of sports
I love it.
together.
My wife and I played high school tennis, and we ventured into pickleball and played with my in-laws. And I've learned quickly, and I'm sorry, Jill and Chuck, with that overhead smash, that competitiveness comes out. So I've had to watch some of that. But for golfing, though, if I remember correctly, I believe, was it Valhalla number 11 is where you had your first hole-in-one. Is that right?
That's right.
So
That's
you
right.
gotta be a pretty good golfer to get a hole-in-one.
Well, I was just lucky that day.
Well, good. Well, I know you got some new irons, so good luck with those as well.
You did your homework.
So let's go to this. Number 3, what's your go-to activity or hobby when you need to just relax or unwind? It may be what you just mentioned. I don't know.
Well, certainly with our couples and other friends, doing some sports together. Our family tends to be beach people, and I love to be on water. So if it's on a boat or on a beach, that's where I find my really happy place, is spending time, particularly with my family around me, being connected to water some way, somehow.
Yeah. Do you take I heard you have the cutest dog ever, Brimley. I heard just adorable. Do you take Brimley with you?
We do take Brimley. He travels an awful lot with us.
That's awesome.
And it's great to see him running around on the beach.
Very cool. Very cool. And our last question is, what's one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self?
I think it gets back to maybe that first topic. You're not quite sure how it's all going to come together. And whether it's faith, or however you might describe that, I promise you it will come together, and things have a way of working out. Now, it's no substitution for making sure you do the right things at the right time and a little bit of old-fashioned, elbow grease. But it's just so hard, and I had such a sense of urgency. And I wanted to maybe get farther ahead than I should be. And the reality is I had the right opportunities at the right time, both personally and professionally. I picked an amazing partner, to help me navigate life with. We obviously created an amazing family together. And so, I think that's the hardest part, when your young self is to know that it's going to be just fine.
Yeah, it's some good advice to pass along. And now remember, with your finances, people, though, it is good to have a plan for that, because that stuff doesn't work out. But in life, I agree with you 100%. And before we wrap up, I do have to ask you, how was your first Taylor Swift concert?
Oh, well, yes. I had the great fortune to go to Taylor Swift, her last U.S. stop in North America.
Awesome.
And the best part was singing and dancing, with my two daughters. They enjoy Taylor Swift, and because of that, I've come to really appreciate her and her music.
She's quite a performer. She really is.
She's an incredible performer.
That's awesome. Well, Jim, thanks for keeping it real with us on the Real Life Finance Podcast. I can't thank you enough for being a guest, and we appreciate all that you do for us here at Old National and all the communities that we serve. And I just want to say thank you for your time today.
Well, thank you, Ben. I'm grateful for the opportunity. And again, congratulations. Old National is a special place, but Old National is only a special place because of team members like yourself. So
appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.